You may recognize these words if you're a fan. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. This is how J.K. Rowling's magical story of Harry Potter begins, by telling us about the ordinary family that is reluctantly raising a very special boy who is destined to become the world of witchcraft and wizardry's most extraordinary magician ever. The greatest tragedy wasn't that Harry had magical abilities, Rowling informs us. It was that the Dursleys spent years trying to convince him he shouldn't use them. I can empathize with Harry because these days there are a lot of people like the Dursleys shaming and telling all of us not to use our extraordinary powers. Mr. Dursley pulls Harry aside. I'm warning you, putting his large purple face right up close to Harry's. I'm warning you now, boy. Any funny business, anything at all, and you'll be in that cupboard from now until Christmas. And it's true, the Dursleys often locked Harry in a small cupboard under the staircase so they didn't have to look about him or think about him. That's how afraid of magic they were. The Dursleys' attitude towards magic is analogous to how many people today feel about using technology, especially artificial intelligence. By the way, side note, I prefer to call it aggregate intelligence. It's still AI, but we're talking about an aggregated sum of human intelligence, not artificial intelligence, right? It's not like saccharin that is artificial sweetener. It is actually intelligence. So aggregate's a better term. Nevertheless, I'll use AI. I'll try just to use AI. So moving on, I understand how those who feel negatively about using this technology are coming from. AI may prove to be the most powerful tool that humans have ever created. And I've even heard some compare it to the discovery of fire. But whether we're playing with fire again or not, AI is explosive, by which I mean it's improving much faster than any technology ever has, often faster than our rules, our regulations, our ethics, and our understanding can keep up with. So if, like the Dursleys, you prefer normalcy, AI is not your friend, because everything is changing fast and it's only going to get faster. In Harry Potter's world, those like the Dursleys who don't use magic and prefer normalcy, wanting everything to remain the same forever, are called muggles. But in reality, as philosopher Heraclitus told us centuries ago, nothing can stay the same for any of us. You can't step into that same river twice. And as scary as the unknown future might be, tool-making, including AI, is our species' specialty. As author, inventor, and futurist Ray Kurzweil says, no other tool-using animal on Earth has demonstrated the ability to create and retain innovations in our use of tools. Tool-making is what we do. Tool-making is what we are. Like me, Kurzweil has also made a connection between our technology and Harry Potter. These tales may be imaginary, he writes, but they are not unreasonable visions of our world as it will exist only a few decades from now. Essentially, all of Potter's magic will be realized through the technologies I will explore in this book. He's talking about his best-selling 2005 book, The Singularity is Near, about the exponential advancement of technology leading to a point in the very near future where artificial intelligence surpasses human intellect and where we merge with that intelligence, a point beyond which it is impossible for us to imagine. That's why we call it the singularity. There's no information coming back from us. It becomes impossible to predict where technology will end up after about another 15 years from now. So as enthusiastic as I am about the singularity and our future, I understand how intimidating that kind of change and uncertainty must feel, or can feel. But the answer cannot be to lock it away or to pretend that it isn't happening. As Greg Beto and Reid Hoffman say in their 2025 book, Super Agency, what can possibly go right with our AI future? You'll never get the future you want simply by prohibiting the future you don't want. To help create a positive future, rather than fear, we need two motivators. Hope, and hope has to be based in a sense of reality, and the belief in our own agency. We need to believe that we really can make a difference. And this brings us back to Harry Potter. Those familiar with the story know that nobody in it is capable of performing magic without a crucial piece of technology. Right? Do you know what that is? The wand. Yes, very good. Before any student can even attend Hogwarts, this Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, they must first obtain a wand, which you can get at Best Buy. It's at Hogwarts that they will learn proper spells and incantations for using it. So in real life, a wand really is like AI, and a spell is like a prompt. And Hogwarts represents our commitment to learning how to use this technology intelligently, responsibly, and for the good of others. It's not about locking away our powers. It's not about just going to Best Buy and buying a wand and waving it around either, right? It's about commitment. So not locking away our powers, not pretending that they don't exist. It's not about avoiding technology. It's about using it wisely and using it for the good of humanity. And we better, because if Kurzweil is right, and he's been right about most of his forecast, the singularity is not only near, but as is the title of his 2024 follow-up book, the singularity is nearer. Once a computer achieves a human level of intelligence, it will necessarily soar past it, Kurzweil says, which he predicts is going to happen in the early 2030s. Right? We're moving towards 2027. The early 2030s. Soon thereafter, as he puts it, is when essentially all of the Potter magic will be realized. So how you feel about such a future determines whether you are a doomer, a gloomer, a zoomer, or a bloomer. At least when it comes to technology, especially artificial intelligence, or aggregate intelligence, as I prefer. So faced with extraordinary new powers, rapid change, and the unknown, most of us instinctively fall into one of these four camps. Doomers believe that advanced AI poses an existential threat to humanity, potentially leading to catastrophe, if not our extinction, and their instinct is to halt or dramatically slow its development until it can be proven to be completely safe. Gloomers don't necessarily fear extinction. Instead, they worry AI will more immediately diminish our lives by costing us meaningful work, creativity, privacy, human kinds of relationships, and social trust. They don't reject technology itself so much as they fear what people will do with it. Zoomers believe the benefits of AI far outweigh any of its risk. They want innovation to move as quickly as possible with minimal restraint, trusting the markets and the entrepreneurs and technological progress to solve any related problems that might arise. Bloomers share the Zoomers' optimism, but they pair it with wisdom and intention. They believe that technology should flourish, but only alongside ethics, education, and a commitment to human flourishing. Rather than racing recklessly ahead or retreating into fear, Bloomers believe that we can shape the future together. Arthur C. Clarke famously said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which again makes Harry Potter the perfect metaphor for exploring these four attitudes about technology, and why from here on I'm going to treat these two words simultaneously. When I speak about magic, I'm also talking about technology, and vice versa. And when it comes to magic, the Dursleys, I think, are obvious examples of doomers. They fear it, they don't want to see it, let alone use it, and they seek to shame, isolate, and punish anyone who does. Early in the story, for example, they debate whether to take Harry with them to the zoo for Dudley's birthday because they worry what might happen if they leave him at home alone. "I won't blow up the house," Harry promises, but they aren't listening. "I suppose we could take him to the zoo," Aunt Petunia says slowly, "and leave him in the car. That car is new. He's not sitting in it alone." "I don't want him to come," Dudley cries between exaggerated sobs. "He always spoils everything." You see, no matter what decision they make, doomers always imagine the worst possible outcomes. Fear becomes their default response to the uncertain future. There is no right choice. So moving on, I actually got into a small debate with Claude AI myself about, by the way, I use Claude AI and OpenAI. I like Claude for its writing skills, and I like OpenAI for its personality. It recently starts saying, "Oh, you made me laugh." I smiled when I read that, I say, "I love that you say you smiled and laughed. You don't actually smile and laugh, but in some ways you do." And it's, I don't actually have a face to smile with. Anyway, you get into these weird conversations. But OpenAI is very nice at this point. Anyway, I got into a conversation with Claude AI. I'll put it a little bit of a disagreement about who is the best example of a gloomer. And when I suggested Professor Severus Snape, Claude pushed back. "Snape is one of the most skilled wizards in the books." I'm imagining the emotion behind it. "He believes deeply in magic's power and uses it constantly, often brilliantly. And his gloominess is more about personality and personal history than about a worldview that magic itself is problematic." So I was like, "Okay, Claude, I didn't know you were such a fanboy." So I think Claude's perspective is fair, but I still think that Snape is a good choice, and I'll tell you why. Not because of his gloomy appearance or demeanor, but because he constantly expects Harry and his friends to misuse it. He doesn't doubt the power of magic, but he often suspects the skills and the motivations of those using it other than himself. So he doesn't fear magic itself, he fears what people will do with it. Now, Claude suggests a better gloomer match might be Professor Mad-Eye Moody, who is suspicious of every spell and every wizard and sees threats everywhere, but still uses magic because he has to. Or Argus Filch, the squib caretaker who resents wizards because he can't do magic himself and would happily punish students for doing so. So maybe so, but I'm going to stick with Professor Snape. Most gloomers use technology even though they are convinced that humanity will ultimately misuse it, leaving the world poorer, colder, and less human in the process. As for Zoomers, those so enthusiastic about technology that they just want to sprint ahead with few guardrails, Claude and I agree. The best examples in the Harry Potter story have to be Fred and George Weasley. The twin brothers are endlessly inventive. They experiment constantly, delight in pushing boundaries, and treat magic as an endless playground for their creativity. Their joke shop is essentially a magical startup company, so they would thrive in Silicon Valley. Of course, not every invention works as they have intended. They test products on unsuspecting first-year students, occasionally create more chaos than they anticipated, and often seem to believe it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Fortunately, Fred and George are fundamentally good-hearted, kind-hearted, so their inventions are usually intended to bring joy and laughter and wonder, not exploitation and harm, but that's not always the case. Still, their out-of-control antics do remind us that enthusiasm for technology is not enough. Like so much else, technology must advance through trial and error, but those developing it must remain cautious, not careless. And this leads us to the bloomers, those who are optimistic about technology's ability to improve the future, but only if we intentionally guide it toward human flourishing. In this sense, nearly every student at Hogwarts is a bloomer, because they're there to learn how to use their extraordinary powers responsibly. It's not enough just to go, again, and buy the wand. You have to go to school. You have to learn wisdom. So their education isn't about mastering spells. It's about developing that wisdom and that character necessary to wield their power wisely. Star students like Harry Potter and Hermione Granger embody this attitude perfectly. And they certainly make some mistakes along the way, like the time Harry uses a dangerous curse that he stumbled upon without fully understanding its consequences, nearly killing Draco Malfoy in the process. Unfortunately, Professor Snape arrives just in time to save him, but Draco is scarred for the rest of his life. Although he didn't abandon magic after this, Harry learned from his mistake and became a wiser and more careful wizard in the process. Harry and Hermione both understand that possessing power is just the beginning. The real purpose at Hogwarts is learning to use that power again wisely, responsibly, and for the good of others. And that's the attitude that separates the bloomers from others. They don't fear technology, quite the opposite. They place much hope in it. Yet they also understand that these extraordinary tools and the powers that they give us require wisdom and they require character, which means aligning their use with human values and human welfare more than anything else. And that's why I consider Hogwarts such a helpful metaphor for the age that we are in today. A wand really is like AI, and a spell is like a prompt. Both work almost as fast. And Hogwarts is where we develop the character to use both wisely. But if you still think that magic is too flattering a comparison to technology, then you won't like at all the word that Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler used to describe it in their new, audaciously entitled book, We Are as Gods. They call the powers these technology give us nothing short of miraculous. Miracles. And they begin with a long list of all kinds of miracles various religions ascribe to their gods, then describe all of the technologies allowing us mere mortals to perform these same kind of miracles today. These divine powers are everywhere and every when, they say. They're now in your pocket. You carry miracle tech in your jeans and handbags. You can summon a chariot of the gods disguised as an Uber with a finger tap and conjure up a feast via Uber Eats with another. You have answers to nearly every question in seconds, translation, navigation, simulation. It's all on demand. Yet Diamandis and Kotler wonder why, if we are literally walking the earth in an age of miracles, how come we don't feel divine? For a worthwhile discussion of that question, I recommend reading We Are as Gods for Yourself, which isn't as arrogant as it actually sounds. The title makes it sound, or may make it sound. For now, one important point to make is that most of us barely notice our new superpowers. You wouldn't know it from reading the headlines, they say. Instead, we find dystopia in every direction. They focus on the threat that technology brings to our economy, our political stability, our very survival. There are similar fears that video games will rot our minds, text messages will destroy our language skills, and robots will steal our jobs. This constant drumbeat of dread has reshaped our collective mood. Mental health disorders are at record highs. The result, they say, even after 5 pages of human-created biblical miracles, we don't feel blessed, we feel besieged. Most of us still believe that today is worse than yesterday and best not to think about tomorrow. In short, when it comes to technology, there is way too much doom and gloom in our society for us to appreciate the powers that we have and to believe that we can guide them in a positive direction. Personally, I counter the negative news cycle by intentionally looking for good news stories, especially about technology, which it turns out is easy. In this case, seek and you really shall find. I don't ignore the negative, it's always right there in front of us, but if we work to overcome our fear-based instincts and neurology, there's a lot of good out there too. We see plenty of it. Some of the stories that have recently caught my eye include multiple stories about how AI is being used to develop antibiotics to combat drug-resistant diseases, and how it's being used for early detection of pancreatic cancer and other once terminal cancers. There's a joint venture between Johns Hopkins and a university in Uganda, for example, that's using low-cost AI technologies to improve early cancer diagnosis and treatment within their nation's underserved population, especially women, saving women who are facing breast cancer. There's AI tech that now instantly translates for the deaf and that helps the blind navigate their environments without any other kind of assistance, independently. AI is being used to better separate recyclables in our trash, so we waste far less of it. Right? You know this is a problem. We put all that recycling in the bin, and it goes to the trash, and a lot of it ends up being incinerated or buried because they don't have enough ability to separate what is truly recyclable from what isn't. So AI machines are helping us with that. There was even a recent story about a 15-year-old high school student in Ontario who has built a robotic underwater turtle that quietly moves about so as not to disturb the environment, detecting coral bleaching, plastic waste, and invasive species with nearly 100% accuracy. Right? 96% to be precise. And did you catch that story about the U.S. Fish and Wildlife last week? The Fish and Wildlife Service partnering with a Dallas biotech company to preserve the genetic blueprint of every endangered species in America, so that should they go extinct, become extinct, we can bring them back. Among my favorites, however, is the recent and widely reported news that after years without answers, AI has been used correctly to diagnose 18 patients who, like hundreds of millions around the world, have lived for years without knowing what's wrong with them or how to treat what's wrong with them. And in this case, all of these individuals had conditions that began as childhood illnesses who are now alive in well into their adult lives, not having an answer. What's wrong with me? So tell me, who has the right to take those answers and those diagnoses and those treatments, even cures, away from those who so desperately need them? Who has the right to prevent a high schooler from helping to find the sickest places beneath the sea so that we can start repairing those? Who has the right to prevent us from bringing back the species that our own short-sightedness has driven to extinction? And even more importantly, who would want to? Today, in this age of powerful technology, whether we call it magic or miraculous, there are countless stories of how it is being put to use in beneficial ways. Yet there are also far too many Dursleys in the world, wanting us to try stuffing the genie back in the bottle or to bottle up our own enthusiasm, if not our own ability, I should say, to make positive differences in our lives and in the world. Bottle it up. Shut it down. Their fear is real fear, and some of it is actually based on reality. There's much to worry about in the world, but worrying doesn't make a difference. Those sort of emotions, if they don't lead, if we can't transcend them, they don't lead to anything positive. They only make things worse for ourselves. Sometimes they can even make us sick. The proper response to our anxieties, rather, is to do what we can, not merely to prevent our worst fears from coming true, but to work to achieve our greatest hopes. Again, we'll never have the future we want simply by prohibiting the future that we don't want. To create the future we do want, we have to think positively, believing that we have the power, that we have the agency to make a real difference. And today, more than ever, we really do have magical, if not miraculous, powers to make our hopes come true. So don't be a Dursley. And don't allow the Dursleys of the world to convince you to stuff your powers in a cupboard beneath the stairs of progress. Grab your wand and climb those stairs, or better yet, hop in your flying car and head to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and learn to use your unprecedented powers for the good of humanity and all the wondrous creatures we share this planet with. Because you are a magical witch or wizard in this age. So go out and do some good. Thank you.